Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be playing Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'm going to be doing a tutorial in the Fenix A320. In today's tutorial we're going to be doing how to fly a VOR approach. Now this is going to be an NDB approach specifically. There are different VOR approaches that you can fly. There's NDB, LOC. Those are the main ones. And there is also literally VOR, but they're all very similar. And this one will apply to VOR and NDB specifically, and LOC, which is a lock approach, that is only slightly different. Essentially, well, I'll tell you when we get to that difference, but we're all good for now. So for starters, you need to make sure that you have your charts open. Navigraph, that is the charts you want, or ChartFox if they are available to you. You want to follow the altitude constraints which are shown on the charts. So as I can see from the approach chart for my arrival into Skiathos, I need to be at 4,000 feet at Skopilos, at the Skopilos VOR. Again, this is VOR approach, so we need to be there at the Skopilos VOR, which is SKP. You must make sure that you tune SKP in the Ravnam page. To do this, you just simply type SKP, like so, SKP. You type it in there, and boom. Yeah. You also want to get your course up. To do this, you must go to your runway chart. This is your arrival chart. See 4,000 at the Skopilos VOR there. That's where you can find it on these charts here. So you need to follow these. So at the Skopilos VOR 4,000, then at D10.0, 2,000 feet. Our course is going to be 8 degrees. You can find that at the top here, or you can find it here. Or you can also find it here. There's many places you can find it. And you input that in below the VOR you've just tuned. So you put whatever's there into there. See, it's asking me for more drag, so I'm going to give it to that. In this case, you use vertical speed, activate it, and I'm going to manually control my speed now because no longer is it going to be managed. It's just going to go in its own accord because I'm forcing the plane to descend essentially. So I'm going to activate my own speed mode, and I'm going to activate spoilers because I know that with the descent it's not going to work very well. So we're just going to activate 50% on our spoilers to help us get our speed down whilst we're descending. We are a bit high right now, which is a bad thing, but it's all good. We can fix that. And at our transition altitude, you change the barometric pressure as you would in a normal flight. Other things you need to look out for is the go around altitude. This can be found here on the Missed Approach page area on the arrival runway chart. Climb to on the course of 8 degrees from LCTR to 2,500. Then turn right, max 185 knots to VOR, climb to 4,000. So 4,000 feet is our go around altitude, and that is already set for us because we need to be at 4,000 at Skopilos, which we have just passed. Our next altitude, because we've gone past Skopilos VOR, is 2,000 feet, so we'll get 2,000 booked into the plane. Because we aren't really losing any speed, I'm just going to put maximum spoilers on to help us with our descent the best we can. Always start with 50%, and if that doesn't work, get down to 100 in worst case scenarios. Always in a VOR approach you want to make sure that you are following the VOR, and to do this you switch this to VOR, and it should be facing where the VOR is. And it is in our case, because you can see the Skopilos VOR is right there in blue. It'll have a little circle and then the VOR it is. It's right there for you. Now because I've descended enough, 2,500 you can get the landing gear down as normal on any approach. and because I'm on managed speed now, I can just get the spoilers and I'm going to arm those ready for arrival. So my next constraint is 2000, then it's 1600, as you can see by the charts. And I need to get my speed down. I'm going to get that down to like 190 because we have a constraint of 185 as we turn around this corner onto the glide path down. When you start to come onto this little solid black line, you want to enable approach mode, which is normal. That it's already enabled for me. I'm going to activate the approach mode with the button there, approach. You do not use localizer unless it is a LOC approach. That's the only difference. If it's an LOC approach, you can do the localizer instead of approach. That's the only difference in LOC compared to VOR and NDB. NDB, the difference between NDB and VOR is NDB won't line you up with the runway. You will have to manually disconnect the autopilot and move yourself so you're directly facing the runway for that to work, which I'll show you in a bit. So because I need to have a constraint of 185 knots, I'm just going to set that. I'm going to make flaps down to 1, 2, because we want them to full as soon as possible. We're going to get medium auto brake on because we're going to need a. That will be found in your performance calculator in here. Arrival, standard Fenix thing. This is not a tutorial on the Fenix, it's a tutorial on a VOR approach in the Fenix. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you need to go learn. So I'm going to get my speed down to 160, because typically you do 160 till 4 DME. DME means the miles to the runway. 4 DME, 4 miles to the runway, so on and so forth. I'm going to get my flaps to full now because we have the speed to suffice that, and that is our approach already because we have the spoilers armed, flaps are full, approach mode activated, VOR is captured. Approach mode is captured, that you'll see that by final approach being shown up here. Of course you need to make sure your minimums are inputted, everything on the performance page for arrival. Again, you can find that on Fenix tutorials. This is a VOR tutorial specifically. Because we are now on the final approach mode, we want to set our go around altitude, which is 4,000 feet as shown on the charts. That's going to be set. And because we're on the glide path down, I'm just going to set managed speed mode now so we can get us down to the speed we want to be at. As you can see, 1600 feet, that's checked. 185 knots is checked, we're lower than that, that's all good. Now it's just about flying in to the runway. See, we're not lined up with the runway's there. If you can see, the runway's this thing here, where the mouse is. We're not lined up with that, and we're not going to. You're going to have to manually. That's an NDB. It means it can't get a precise location of the runway, so you will have to manually turn yourself. So you cannot do an auto land on an NDB approach. You must make sure that you tune your VOR in the RadNav page, otherwise this all goes wrong. You need to make sure your course is set, your VORs are set. You can rather put the frequency in for the VOR or just type the VOR in. Both will work, and it'll input the VOR into the RadNav page either way. Now, because as soon as you can see the pappies, you can disconnect the autopilot and then get lined up with the runway. As soon as you see the pappies clearly, you can disconnect the autopilot, line it with the runway, because it's NDB approach. You cannot auto land. So I can see the pappies now, so I'm going to turn myself and line myself up with the runway. And now I have manual control of the plane. Make note of this little square. If this square is on the yellow line, you're on for a perfect landing. If it's above, you're too high. If it's below, you're too low. And the pappies will also tell you that. 2 reds, 2 whites is where you want it. More reds than white means you're too low, more whites than red means you're too high. Standard
50, 40, 30,
30, so I'm going to put that.
5.
Landed. Reversers out. Had a bit of a bounce there. Yeah. I understand that was a bit rushed, I do apologise for that. But that's how it is on approaches. Certainly like these ones where you have to focus. Essentially just look at your charts, same for an ILS, which is the easiest approach. Look at your charts, make sure everything is inputted, and you'll be fine. But instead of tuning an ILS frequency, you tune the VOR. You make sure that the needle, this needle here, the arrow, is facing the VOR, and if it's not, then something's gone wrong. You haven't tuned the VOR correctly, you cannot fly the approach. But anyways, yeah, that's basically it, you know. A few things that I didn't really touch on, I'm just going to stop here because I'm not online. A few things that I didn't touch on because it was going so quick. How do you tune the VOR? How do you make the needle show? See, it's facing the VOR. I was clear to do the approach because the needle knows where the VOR is. That means I'm correct. I can fly the approach fine. To tune the VOR, if I turn these off, you find the needle goes. Of course, to turn it on, you just flick the needles to the right. 1 and 2, that's VOR on, that's VOR 2. If I turn VOR 2 off, you find the thick one goes off. Of course, VOR 1 is just the thin one. If I just do tune VOR 2, you've just got a thick one. If you always tune them both for the most accurate results. I tend to have one on the VOR actually on this one, the VOR on this one. However, I have this one on the VOR page typically, because that's more accurate shown. So, typically when flying a VOR approach, you need the minimums which are set. They aren't the necessary. They are simply just a barrow minimum. They aren't a runway minimum because it's not precise enough. VORs aren't precise enough to give you a runway minimum, so it's just a generic barrow minimum. So yeah, it's 1,600, 1,591 feet. Brackets are the feet. Minima is the highlighted bold one, and the one before the bracket. Always follow your altitude constraints, otherwise you may find you are too low or too high, leading to a go-around being performed, which you do not want in most cases. So at the VOR we wanted to be at 4,000 feet, then we wanted to be at 2,000 feet at this waypoint, and then we'll fly the 8 degrees course as programmed into the flight management computer, and then 1,600 feet at this waypoint, and then it's just down into the runway. As soon as you reach your final waypoint before you reach the approach, so the final waypoint for me would have been the Scopulos VOR. At that point I should have set the go-around altitude of 4,000 feet. Of course it is 4,000 feet there, so I didn't have to do anything, but if it wasn't, you change it to the go-around altitude, activate the approach mode. As soon as you get onto this bold black line, you activate the approach mode as you are on the approach at that point. Make sure the approach phase is activated in the performance page as normal for an ILS or any approach. One key thing to note, LS buttons should not be enabled in a LOC, VOR, whatever approach. LSs do not be enabled, they are only for ILS approaches. Flight directors are enabled though. The only difference between an LOC and an NDB or VOR approach is LOC is activated instead of approach mode in an LOC approach. That's it. That's the only thing different. Now, you must look at your charts. Charts are very useful in any approach, certainly the ones which aren't ILS, because they are harder. You must look at your charts. You must have charts available to you, otherwise there's no guarantee you're going to successfully fly the approach. So, yeah. Most things are normal. Again, spoilers armed for the approach, flaps set to whatever setting you want, config 3 or full typically. Spoilers armed, of course. Seatbelt signs, landing lights at 10,000 feet as normal. And yeah, I think that's all there is to it. If you have enjoyed this, make sure you let me know in the comment section down below. And maybe consider subscribing and liking, but I'm not going to force anything on that. I do this for fun and not for the views or anything, as you may see from my view count and consistency. I do not care about the views, I care about helping people and letting people have an enjoyable time watching content on YouTube. So thanks all for watching, and I hope to see you in more tutorials for the Fenix A320. See ya.